I'm going to start recording because I just want to. I want to see. How many students thought this week's assignment was really easy? Raise your hand. One person thought it was really, really easy. Okay. The reason why I think he's joking. He knows that I joke about it. He's joking with me. The thing is, my purpose is to get you to start thinking about taking ideas and putting them into numbers. And that's a very important skill. It's a very important ability that you can have, is to take ideas, is to be able to take ideas and put them into numbers, numbers that mean something, numbers that actually express something about the idea that you're examining. And so, the purpose of that assignment is to get you comfortable with taking an idea and putting it into numbers. Now, it's not going to be easy, and if you're struggling with it, that's good, because I want you to just to see how these ideas, when I talk about numbers, how that translates, how we can translate that into reality. And for you, the way to get comfortable, the way to get comfortable with that is to do it. Is to do step by step. So what I try to do is give you a basic formula, step by step, so you can try to figure out. How to do that yourself. To take some idea, put it into, to say, oh, okay, you're talking about utility. Well, you get utility from consuming something. Well, if you consume something, then it takes time and money. Time plus money. And so if you're going to take time plus money, well, how do you put those together? Well, you get hours of time that you spend consuming, and the amount that you consume. And the amount you consume is based on the amount of money you have. So how much you can buy. And what I said with the price, if the price is just one, then it's just your income. So now I've got an equation that says this is what I consume. And I spend time and money. And that's kind of everything that you consume. Everything takes time and money to consume. So then, if you take that idea, let's go over this. Okay. Let me just check this and make sure that we're. And I'm going to. Okay, I'm just. Okay. Now, when you see the video, can you read? Excuse me. When you see the video, can you read that off of the? I'm going to close the frames here as well. All right. Okay. Okay, guys. All right. Now, so we're talking about. So you've got some. I get satisfaction from consuming, and that consuming I need time and money. So I need time and money, and each one of these, I have to spend a certain amount of time and spend a certain amount of money. If I spend zero time, then I can't get any satisfaction no matter how much money I have. And I have no money. If I have no money, I can't get any satisfaction even if I spend all day, because I don't have any money. So I've got to have both of those things in order to get satisfaction. So, but in order to make money, I have to work. So I have to spend time working, but the more time I spend working, the less time I can spend consuming the product, and that's what gives me satisfaction. So it's that trade-off. So you can see what we're setting up as a problem that has trade-offs. Trade-offs between time spent working, which you have to do to make money, and time spent consuming, which you have to do in order to get the satisfaction out of consuming. You have to sleep, you have to eat, you have to do basic things in order to enjoy your life. And so we're describing that just with some very simple equations. These are very simple equations. How much time do you have? Well, you have 24 hours in a day. You either work or you're in leisure. One or the other. That's pretty simple. And your income is just what you get paid per hour times the number of hours. Very simple. Those are very, very simple equations. And that constrains. This is like your limit. If your wage is infinite, then it doesn't matter. You don't have infinite time. You don't have infinite time. If your wage is infinite, then you just consume whatever you want. And in fact, if your wage is infinite, you'll just work as little as possible because you're going to get an infinite amount anyway. So if you could get an infinite amount per hour, I'll work 5 seconds and make an infinite amount of money, and then spend all of it on spend all my time having a good time. That's great, but that's not life. The real world, that's a limit there. You have to go out and you're going to get paid that, and that's your choice. How much time do you work? How much time do you spend consuming? That affects both of that affects your income, and they're trade-offs. If you get more work, you have less time, which means you'll get less satisfaction. So you have a trade-off. So it's a very basic. It's a very simple problem, but it tells us a lot. It tells us a lot about how to think as economists, and how to create to take ideas and put them into a mathematical form, a logical form that allows us to do and to analyze things, allows us to analyze the way that how the world might work, and see then to compare that with reality to see if we have a model that provides us with some insight on the nature of reality. So you take a variable, leisure time. That's the time you spend when you're not working. Okay. Now, how do we say that our satisfaction increases as your leisure time increases, but at a decreasing rate? Well, then I ask you these questions. And what this says, you go through, set alpha equal to 0. Anything to the 0 power is 1. It's always 1. That's anything to the 0 power. So if I double my, if alpha is 0, what happens to my satisfaction if I double my leisure time? It does nothing, there's no change. It doesn't have any, it's still 1. If I double the leisure time, the value is still 1. It's always 1. If I have fun 24 hours a day, it doesn't make. In other words, the marginal value is 0. There's no marginal value. That's so. The answer is it can't be. It can't be 0. It can't be 0. But if we set it to 1, if we set it to 1, then it's if we set it to 1, and let's say and have leisure time of 2, 2 to the 1 is 2. 4 to the 1 is 4. 6 to the 1 is 6. That's all 1. That's all 2, 4, 6. What's the marginal increase? The marginal from 2 to 4, the increase is 2. From 4 to 6, the marginal increase is 2. That's not decreasing marginal. That's not increasing at a decreasing rate. It's increasing at a constant rate. At a constant rate. So if I've got the idea that our satisfaction increases but at a decreasing rate, it must be that this can't be 0 or 1. It can't be 0, and it can't be 1. Because if it increases at a decreasing rate, the third one, 0.5, 2 to the 0.5 is 1.4. 1.414. 4 to the 0.5 is 2. 6 to the square root of 6 is 2.2. 2.5, so 4 something. So in other words, the marginal increase is getting smaller and smaller as HE increases. That's decreasing marginal utility. Because my marginal utility, remember that my decreasing marginal utility is based with holding income constant. If income doesn't change, just the only thing that changes is this, and that's 0.5. The increase is always it keeps on increasing, but at a decreasing rate each time. That's decreasing marginal utility. That's exactly what decreasing marginal utility is. So what I'm doing is I'm showing that right in an equation. It's right there. So you can see it. And so put the numbers, just play with the number. Put it in an Excel sheet. Oh, right. That's the idea. So to get you to go through that, and so that's when I said what value of alpha best expresses the idea that as our satisfaction increases as HE increases, but at a decreasing rate. What's 0.5? That's the one. That's the one where as our satisfaction grows, but it grows less and less. And all I do, put in a spreadsheet. If you couldn't understand how to do that, go back and go to a spreadsheet and send it to me later. That's fine. I'll still give you credit. You'll get credit for it. And what I wanted to do is to make sure that you can understand this and understand the idea and understand to see, oh, okay, I can put an idea into a symbol, and the symbol has some meaning, and it's not some magic. It's not magic. You know. I don't know what to do with that. It's real basic. Just it's simple. It's direct, and it expresses something that has something to do with reality. That's the point here. So now what I say is, okay. So we consume some good. It takes these two, time and money, and you know that. You go out and consume something. Well, I buy this. I usually use this as a problem lot because it's always available. But okay, I had to spend money, and I take time. I gotta take time. I go to a movie, or I watch a movie If I watch the movie on YouTube, well, I have to spend money for internet access. That costs me money. Maybe I have to spend money for a subscription. Maybe I need to pay some subscription. And I certainly have to spend time. I have to spend time also. So this is almost anything you can think of. Any consumption that you do takes both time and money. Anything. So if we take, that's just taking that idea, time and money. That's all. That's all that it is. So this is a very interesting point, is how is this both complements and substitutes? This is a very important idea. You'll want to, and again, if you struggle with that, that's okay. That's okay, because this is a part of learning, and this is very subtle. Understand why when you multiply, this idea of multiplying two things together to create something is both a substitute and a complement. And they're complements. They're complements because let's look at the equation. C equals H times I. Why are they complements? Complement means that if one increases, if the price of one goes down, the demand for the other goes up. If our income goes up, then if we have more leisure time, we'll have more. We can consume more. And well, that's one way of looking at it. The other way is just to simply think that if one is zero, then no matter how much you have the other, your utility is 0. So that's the complement. You have to have them both. They complement each other because you have to have them both. You must have them. You must have them both. So that's how they're complements. You must have them both. Okay. And as one goes up, the other one becomes more. If you increase the other, you get more value. You're better off. But the easiest way to think about it is if you make one 0, then the other, it doesn't matter if you have an infinite amount of money, you don't have any time, it has no value. You have to spend time. So that means that they complement each other. Complement means you need both of them. That's simply what a complement is. Complement means you must have both. You need both. So when you multiply this kind of relationship, that says I need both of these. I need them together. I need time and money. I need both. That means they're complements. That's what makes them complements. But I can also substitute. And that way I can look, well, let's see, if I have, let's say I have 4 hours and 1,000 income, I have 4,000. I get 4,000 by having 2 hours and 2,000 income. That'll give me the same. Or 8 hours and 500 income. Same satisfaction. All of them deliver the same satisfaction. So if they're all delivering the same satisfaction, and I can raise the one and lower the other, I'm substituting. I'm substituting time for money or money for time. That's substituting. That's what substitution is. I'm substituting. I can substitute both. Substitute one for the other. That means they're substitutes. They're both complements and substitutes. And the way that I show that relationship is through this mathematical form. I multiply them. If I add, I can substitute, but they're not complements. They don't complement because you don't need. If the relationship is additive, if I got utility by either having leisure or money. So if I had no leisure but lots of money, I could get utility. Or if I had lots of leisure and no money, I could get utility. That would mean that they're just substitutes. That's only something. They don't complement because you don't need one. You don't need. You don't have to have one. But most things in this looks more realistic. I think from your experience, you generally need time and money. You don't. It's either time. It's not like I'll spend lots of time, but I don't have any. So that'll make up for not having money. Maybe some things and maybe some time. Most of the time you need time and money. So think about that. So when you're expressing, and what I'm doing, I'm taking that idea, and I'm putting that into an equation. And you can see the difference between that equation, what that tells us, and what this equation tells us about the relationship between time and money here, and the relationship between time and money here. Because here, they're both complement. They complement each other because you need them both, and they substitute. You can substitute one for the other. Substitutes and complements. And these are very important. It's a very important idea. That idea that something can be both a substitute and a complement. It's a very interesting idea. And you can express it very simply. So then that's how I say. And if you haven't answered it, if you didn't understand, go write the answer, and I don't care. Write it down and send it to me. I'll give you credit. Okay? Because I want you to know that you're understanding it. Because if you write it down, then I say, okay, you go through the trouble of writing it down, you're going to begin to understand it. So if you didn't understand it, go ahead, go back and write it. You know, you get some credit for it. I mean, why not? I want you to understand this. You know, the purpose here is to learn and understand. You know, and so is to give you insight. If you already, if you answered all of this, I'm doing this so that you understand this. And if you struggle to understand it, then go back. And that's why I'm lecturing about it right now, so that you can understand this. This is very important. These kinds of ability, the ability to do this, because it doesn't just work in economics. These are ideas and approaches to solving problems that you can use in a lot of fields. We're talking about doing simulations, and simulation means you're creating a numerical. You're taking ideas, putting them in a numerical form, and creating an analysis. There's a lot of things out there in the real world are done using simulations. Lots. Engineering, business, engineering, all kinds, marketing, all kinds of fields that you do that kind of thing that we call simulation. So that's part of the idea. I wanted to get you to doing that. So I go through that discussion, and then I say, again, the value of beta, that using logic we use to solve 15, 1, 2, 3, and 4 for alpha, which value of beta expresses that idea? Well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's between 0 and 1. The 0.5. 0.5 expressed because that's the value of the income. The value of the income is going to increase, but at a decreasing rate. If I have twice the money, I don't get twice as happy. I'm happier, but I'm not going to be twice as happy. If I double my money, I'm not twice as happy. But I'm happier, but not twice as happy. Okay? That's the idea. And I think you can easily, you go out and you make twice as much money, probably, you're really happier. But you probably think of it quite easily. You'll probably experience that. Maybe you've already experienced it. So then we want to look at this and see how all of this interacts together. Okay. Now I've done this alpha and beta equals to 1. That idea will just accept that now. Don't worry about that as to what that means. That's just to make it simple, just to keep it from being complicated. But one of the things that means, since they both have to be between 0 and 1, is that both of them, if they add up to 1, they're both between, and they both have to be positive, then they're both between 0 and 1, which means they both have decreasing marginal utility. In both alpha and beta produce increasing utility, but at a decreasing rate. But what's interesting about beta is that this is income. So then, if beta is, if we substitute this is a constraint, we can just put the income equals wage times hours worked. That's our constraint. We just substitute that in there, and look what happens. So that is W times HK to the beta. Okay, you may look at that and say, oh, that looks scary. That's really scary. Stop. That's just I. That's just I. Just I. Just put I to the beta. As our income increases and increases, our satisfaction increases at a decreasing rate. So they just stick that into I, and it looks scary, but all that it is, well, there's our wage times our hours in the beta. And in fact, we can simplify that. You could do algebra. It's pretty basic. That's W to the beta times H working hours to the beta. Pretty basic stuff. This is high school stuff. And presumably you graduated from high school when you were here. And so I think you learned how to do this in high school. Okay, so this can't be that scary. So other thing is, this is between 0 and 1, okay? That's between 0 and 1, which means that as this increases, because remember, we can't do anything. A student asked a very good question, in terms of expressing, in terms of why not for wage? Well, we assume that we can't control our wage. Wage, we go out, we have a skill, somebody pays us for that. So that's something, we can't affect our wage. We can affect what we have control over is our time that we spend. So in terms of our income, and since our income increases with beta, that means that our time worked, our utility, this is 0 and 1, so that the value in terms of our satisfaction as the hours work increases, but at a decreasing rate. So what we're saying is now so we're saying what's the marginal value? That tells us the marginal value of work. That's what that beta tells us. Additional hour work, what's the increase in our satisfaction? Because that's related to income. That's what that means. So now, the other one tells us, here, HE to the alpha, HE to the alpha, that tells us our satisfaction increases with our leisure. That's the value we put on leisure. That alpha tells us our value of leisure. The bigger that value, the more value we put on leisure. The bigger this value, the more value we put on work. And since they both add up to 1, and they add up to 1, if one increases, the other has to decrease. So that tells us, which do we value? Do we value work more? Do we get satisfaction from money? Or do we value leisure time more? We get more satisfaction from leisure, and we're substituting more leisure for money, or we're willing to substitute more money for leisure. That's the choice. And different people have different choices. Some people want a lot of leisure time, they're happy with a little money, and other people want lots of money so that they can blow it on when they have a little bit of leisure time and show off. You know, so that's what people do. Different people do different things to get satisfaction. Not everyone's the same. Everybody's different. And so we can kind of express a lot of these ideas. But the idea that how do the possible values express the idea that the demand for leisure time and work time are both downward sloping. Remember what we said about a diminishing marginal utility. Diminishing marginal utility means downward sloping demand curve. That's what it means. That means that we'll want another good, but we're only willing to we'll pay less for the next one. And why are we willing to why do we have to, if we're going to consume more, we have to have the price has to get lower? Because the next one we consume, we don't get as much satisfaction. That's exactly what downward sloping demand curve means. That's exactly what it means. So get that in your mind. Downward sloping demand curve, diminishing marginal utility. Alpha is between 0 and 1. Diminishing marginal utility. Beta between 0 and 1. That's for leisure. Beta between 0 and 1. Diminishing marginal utility of income. Diminishing marginal utility. Downward sloping demand curves. Remember those two things. You get that concept, and you're going to understand a lot in economics. Now, so let's go. Now use that to express utility as a function of only leisure time. You just simply substitute. You substitute income, simple algebra, substitute for that, income equals, that's W times HK raised to the beta, and then you substitute for HK to express it as HE, as leisure. So you just do two-step, It's very simple, do two-step. And then the entire equation is just expressed as leisure time. So then you just choose how much leisure. Even now it's a very simple problem to choose your leisure time. And then the last one is use that to study the effect of different preferences for work and leisure. Because the higher the beta, that means we value work more. The higher the alpha, we value leisure more. So I asked you to take these two examples. And because it's not an easy problem to solve analytically, but there's a lot of problems in this world that analytically it may not be easy to solve, but you can solve it using simulation. There's a lot of things that you can solve with simulation. So that's just solve it with simulation. Just put and since the only thing you have to worry about is your leisure time, well, your leisure time is 0 to 24, so just put, like I did in the table, the spreadsheet, type in your formula, type in the formula, which is just type in the equation, type in this equation with inputting these constraints into that equation, take that equation, code it in the formula, put the values and just run it and do zoop, 0 to 24. And there's your answer. That's it. Okay, that's it. So, if you struggled with that, that's fine. And I'll see how much each one of you did. But what I want you to do now, is take the, reminds me of something, is take this, if you struggle with this, go back and do this over. And get this so that you've got this problem. And if you do that, go back and do that. Go watch this lecture. I said last time 2 people watched the lecture. I think one of them was me because I checked it when I put it online, which means only 1 person looked at the lecture. Now that's all right, but if I see that people turned in and they struggle with it, then I hope that if a lot of people did that, then I hope that lots of people watch this video. Lots. So, now, what I know, because what I wanted to do now what I want to do is, because we're getting to that point in the lecture, and people are kind of awake today, so I wanted to tell you about what bright-eyed and bushy-tail. I was talking about, I've been meaning to do this for like forever in class, and I've always forget, but we have the term bright-eyed and bushy-tail. Now, we're referred to as squirrel. We refer to squirrels as the squirrels are always like very alert, mainly because they don't want to get eaten, but so anyway, when we say that, then there's that bushy, look at that means that the squirrel's healthy. It has a nice fat tail. We call it bushy tail. So it's very healthy, it's very alert. And everybody looks very healthy and alert today. So I'm very happy to see that. And so if you, this is, and of course here the squirrel's holding the cup of coffee. So for those of you like I can see with the Red Bull and the Monster out there, people are, yeah, you want to stay awake today. Great, and you have today. I've kept you awake. So, but this is my bright-eyed and bushy-tail. That is a term that we like to use, and usually people use it as a joke because usually they may not feel bright-eyed and bushy-tail, which is quite often happens in this class because it's right after lunch. So. With that, we will get started on the lecture today. We've gone over that first part, but I wanted to go over that because I think it's really important. And I do hope that unless you understood that perfectly, unless that was so easy for you that you don't need any help, I would hope that you spend time looking at that very carefully because I think you can learn a lot about economics. And you learn a lot by going over and listening to that. Now, we've already talked about what perfect competition. And let me erase all of this and clear the board. Now we're going to talk about, I introduced the idea of industrial organization last week. And And what that means is the way that industries organize, the way that industries compete with each other. That's what we call in economics and business, we call industrial organization. And we say that there's 4 forms of that: perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, and monopoly. These other 3 we're going to introduce later. I think we're basically going to spend the rest of the semester focusing on perfect competition because it's your basic idea of competition. It's your basic idea, and that is it's characterized by many small firms. Notice I say many and small. Many, numerous firms, and they're all relatively small. And what that means is that there's so many of them and they're relatively small, is that none of them can affect the price of either their inputs, or that they don't have pricing power in inputs and outputs. That when they make something, they can't decide, they have no power on affecting the price of the good. If they need to hire an input, whether it's labor or other input, they have no power over the price of the input. That's what perfect competition is. Many small firms. That comes out of that idea. The next thing is that each firm produces an identical product. They all make something that's exactly the same. They can't differentiate. Now in the real world, most of the time, in fact, we'll see something called, with monopolistic competition, this probably characterizes most competition in the real world, and that is that you see products that are fairly similar, but a little bit different. Go and walk down the street here, down to Monte San Udori there, and go down and look at the shops, and you'll see for example, the handbags. Go down there, and maybe some of you have done that or do that, and you'll see that there's different handbags. Well, they all are handbags. You can put things in them. They all do the same thing. You stick things in them, but they have different colors, they have different material. Some cost a little bit, and some cost an ungodly amount. So, and in other words, what they do is they differentiate. That's monopolistic competition. But what we're going to talk about is perfect competition, where it's exactly the same product. And I'll give you a few examples of that to get your mind around that. You've seen this picture before. This is the wheat field in Washington State, the U.S. Now that's a pretty big wheat field, but in the whole world, that even this farmer, even though that field is large, there's lots of wheat is produced worldwide. You grow wheat in the United States, you grow it in Canada, you grow it in a little bit in China, you grow it in Australia, it's grown in Ukraine, in Russia, and it's grown many places in the world. Anybody that any single producer of wheat, and they're kind of the same, maybe they're a little bit different. There's winter wheat and there's spring wheat, but they're pretty basically the same thing. There's not that much difference. So we can kind of look at that, and basically for your standard wheat, you put that, when the farmer brings that to market, the farmer doesn't say, I want this much for it. The market says, well, this is what we're going to pay for it. If you don't want it, you either throw it away, then you can store it. That's what some people do. Farmers do store their product and maybe wait for prices to improve. That's one thing they can do. But they can't say, I want $10 a bushel, or $10 a bushel, or 1,000 yen a bushel, and the market says, no, it's only 400 yen a bushel. And you can't say, well, I want 1,000. Well, that's nice. You're not getting it. That's perfect competition. They're facing perfect competition. They have really no control over the price. There's another example of that. There's a rice farm at Akiko. And here, probably, that might be one farmer. There could be several farmers. There's lots and lots of rice farmers. Now, there are different varieties of rice. there are different varieties, and if you're a connoisseur, you know, and you can go to the store, and there's that certain rice. Akita Ken has a certain kind of rice, and Niigata Ken has a certain rice. You know, so they're all, and each one has a certain qualities, and there's little differences and all. But they're basically, you know, there's some difference, but they're basically the same thing. There's not that much difference. There's not that much. That's another example of perfect competition. I promised to go back to the ant world there. The ants produce, remember I said a firm is anything that produces something for, you know, they're producing they're producing food, and it's kind of the same, you know, they're making it all, it's all the kind of same. There's lots and lots of ants making this stuff, and all the other, and the larvae, the baby ants get, you know, the price is kind of, they get fed it. So I guess that means the price is kind of the same. But it's basically, there's a certain formula of production. They produce the same good. That's kind of an example of, that's also kind of perfect competition. I'll use the ants because they really are, in many ways, this is a classic, the way ants operate is in many ways kind of the insect world, shall we say, example of perfect competition. So I think it's a great example. I use that more. But this is it. They produce. That's their farm, and they bring the stuff in, and they grow the fungus. You can see the white stuff there. They're growing that. They harvest it and feed it to the, you know, it's all the same stuff. It's all the same stuff. It's a formula. It probably doesn't vary at all. Keep everything within the same temperature, produce the same product. It's kind of perfect competition. There's cows. This is your classic milk cow. They're called Holsteins. It's a breed that produces a lot of milk, and they produce a lot. For the size of the animal or what they're fed, they produce more milk than other breeds. So that's why most cows look like this. If you see them, that's because these are the ones that produce the most milk. Now the thing about that is it's also kind of all the same, pretty much. I mean, they all produce the same milk. They have a certain fat content. The only thing that makes milk different is fat content. The breeds are different, but most milk is from this variety anyway. And because if they're eating the same thing, they have the same fat content. So all those cows are just pumping out the same milk. It's the same milk. They blend it all together because it's all the same. It's all the same stuff. That's a perfect competition. That's a product that is pretty much perfect competition. You go to the store. Now some people will say, yeah, there's Hokkaido milk, or there's, you know, there's this milk or that milk, and there's some differences. It's milk. You know, it's milk. It's you know, that's an example of kind of perfect competition. If I'm a farmer, I can't. If I produce, I have little impact. Again, I have little impact on the price of my product because it's hard to differentiate. It's hard to separate out. Just to keep in mind. Hang in there. Now we're going to talk about we're in perfect competition in terms of what the perfectly competitive firm, the output demand curve, the perfectly competitive firm experiences. So if we've said that the firm is, it's called, we say the firm is a price taker. Price taker. So that's what we say, a perfectly competitive firm is a price taker. And what I've said, firm can't have any impact on the price of its good. They can't go to the market and say, well, I want this. I'm not going to, that's that or nothing. And they're going to say, well, then it's nothing, because the market decides, not the individual producer. So how do we do that? We say, well, for some good X, any good X, and some firm I, any firm I, because remember there's Sunken X, and there's lots and lots of firms I, many small firms that are represented by I. So if I make one, if I don't make the product, if I make 0 units of the product, what's the price? Well, let's say 60 is the market price. I make 0 units, the price is 60. I make 1 unit, the price is 60. 2, 60, 3, 60, 4, 60. I make as much as I want. The price doesn't change. So that means I have a flat demand curve. This is that simple. Take that idea, price doesn't change, I can't do anything about it. Well, it's just a flat, it's called a horizontal demand curve. This demand curve is also, it has a term we call perfectly elastic. It's perfectly elastic. That means the response is, there's an infinite response to price change. So, if I produce 4 units, how many does the market want to buy from me? 4. If I produce 6 units, how many units does the market want from me? 6. 10 units? 10. That's 60. If I go to the market and I say, oh, I want 65. Okay, I'll give you 1 for 65. They won't give you any for 65. You get nothing. You sell nothing. 60.61. Nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You'll sell nothing. In a perfectly competitive market, the market price is 60. You say, no, I want 61. I want 60.5. 60.2. No, forget it. Nothing. 60. But what happens if it's 58? You want to sell it for 58? Yeah, okay. Why not? You want to, if the price is 60 and you want to sell it to me for 60, I'll take it for 68 and I'll turn around and sell it for 60. That's called arbitrage. That's what, if you've heard of the term arbitrage, that's called arbitrage. If you're willing to offer it for less than the market price, and I'll turn around and I'll be happy to buy it from you. Okay, let's do a deal. Now, but what happens? But what happens when you're? Why would you offer something at 58 when the market will give you 60? Why would you offer 59? The market will give you 60. That's the market price. So you'll take 60. You can't get any more, and you're stupid to sell it for less. That's 60. That's the demand curve, the perfectly competitive firm. But what's interesting, and this is very important, what's interesting is this is the actual demand curve. That's the demand curve for the industry. It is downward sloping because demand is downward sloping. Demand's downward sloping because people have diminishing marginal utility. So diminishing marginal utility is this is the industry demand curve. That's all the demand. So that's across all households. So that's all households. So all households is a downward sloping demand curve. How do you get a downward from single house? You just add up all the households. You add them all up. They all have downward sloping demand curves. The sum is just, you sum them all up, boom, 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 go across. That's the industry demand curve. It's downward sloping. So here's the interesting thing. And this is what makes perfect competition this is what the producer sees. This is their reality. But this is the overall reality. There's two realities. There's the reality of the overall market, and there's the reality that faces the individual producer. This is the overall market. It is downward sloping. But no producer can take advantage of that. Producers are unable to take advantage because they're too small. There's too many of them and they're too small. They can't affect the price of the product. that means that they're price takers. They take the price. They take the price that the market says. That's a price taker. But that's the real market. And that's what characterizes perfect competition. Now input prices. It's the same thing. Exactly the same thing. The input supply curve the perfectly competitive firm experiences. Let's say the demand for labor in firm I. If I hire one worker, what's the wage? Let's say it's 60. If I hire the second, what's the wage? I go out in the market, you put up a sign, you see the Autobaito, go around town, just see that Autobaito. What is it about all those? Go around and just look around. You'll see the signs, the stores all over town. What's the numbers? Always real close. 850, 900, extra maybe 1,000, 1,100, 1,150. Those numbers you see all over town, it's all kind of the same. Because they don't have, the individual firms have no pricing power. They're price takers. So, I hire one worker, wage is 60, 2, 60, 5, 60, 10, 60, it doesn't matter. That next worker is still the same wage. And this is the input supply curve that the perfectly competitive firm faces. Again, this is perfectly elastic. What happens if I go to the market and say, well, I'm not paying 60, I want 55. I can only afford 55. The market will tell you, you can't afford anybody. You can't afford anybody. Nobody's going to work. Because they can go out and get 60. They're going to work for you for 55. Unless they like you, I don't know. So you can't lower your wage below that. Again, at least in this market, in this kind of market, what if I pay 61? Is anybody going to say no? No, if they're going to get 61, and you're offering 61. Everybody else is 60. Well, that person's going to take 61. They're not stupid. They're not stupid, but they're happy with that. So if you're happy, they're happy. But you don't have to pay 61. You're a nice guy. So there's a going rate. There's a going rate. You have no incentive to pay more, and you get nothing, and you'll get nothing if you pay less. Nobody will work for you if you pay less. That's a perfectly competitive input market. And that specifically is for labor. But there is, in fact, the overall labor supply curve. The overall labor supply curve, you got more labor, you got to pay more. That's the overall labor supply curve. And say it's 0, that's positive. That's something like maybe nobody will work for anything less. And it's minimum wage. Maybe minimum wage law, or nobody work, there's some lower bound. Nobody's going to, even if it's not 0, it's still a positive number, you'll get nobody to work. But for a particular good, the industry is going to have to pay more. Let's say that's millions, whatever. That's a quantity of labor, thousands, millions, whatever kind of number, some big number, it doesn't matter. And again, remember, these numbers don't matter either, just numbers here in this case. It's upward sloping. To get that next worker to come in for the industry, they got to pay more. But for individual firms, they face constant market. So these are interesting. This is the world, the way it works for a perfectly competitive firm. And one of the things that we see is the perfectly competitive firm doesn't have what's called market power. It's a very important word. market power. We're going to see this word a lot next semester, for those of you that are going to be around. But I'll introduce the idea now. Market power means that a firm has some control over the price of its inputs and outputs. Control. Right? Perfectly competitive firms have no market power. So what does a perfectly competitive firm do? What we're going to show is that they do have choices. They may not have market power. They may not. They may not be able to control the prices of their inputs and outputs, but they do have some control. And we'll be studying that. And so what they do have control is they can control how much output to supply. What do they supply? How much do they supply? The other thing they control is the production technique they use to produce it, how they make it. They can choose that. So they're going to look around, they're going to choose the production technique. The production technique is the use of inputs, including labor, to produce the output. So we're going to go over some examples of that so you can see what those are, of what production technique is. Now what's important here is that the mix of production technique and output level determines the overall cost the firm experiences in producing its output. And that's what we're going to talk about here, is that the cost can vary with the technique that's used in the amount of output. So even if the firm has no control over the price of its inputs and outputs, the firm still has this control. And what we're going to analyze is that even if the firm doesn't have that control, the firm still, for the control that it does have, how does it optimize? Because we're always trying to do better. Remember, it always gets back to that first fundamental principle: more is better. More is better. More is better. More here is profit. And that is the output, that production technique that maximizes profit. That's more is better. We're going to pick. You go out. You don't pick the one that gives you the least profit, unless it takes no effort. But it's and we'll get to that as well, and that will help explain something as well. Profit, because profit is not just, say, the difference between revenues and costs, but when we say cost, so profit equals revenue minus cost. Revenue is real easy. It's money, pretty much. I mean, people give you money for what you're selling, and you take that to the bank. That's money. But cost is a little bit more complicated. Cost is less straightforward, actually, because it can be the cost of inputs. And that would be what you pay for labor, what you pay for rent, what you pay for your raw materials, what you pay for maybe consulting, taxes. All of those things are costs. Those are all money. But it isn't just money. There's the opportunity cost of inputs. What does that mean? You know what an opportunity cost is. Opportunity cost is the next best thing we can use, that we can use that something for. It's something else. We have alternatives for that. So let's say we have, let's say I run two firms. I run a restaurant, I run a trucking company. And I got my people working for the restaurant, and then I say, well, we need you to drive truck today. We need you to make a delivery. Or in fact, the restaurant does have people who do deliveries. So it's kind of both. So today, you're going to do deliveries. Tomorrow, you're going to cook. Okay? It's how you use, that's the opportunity cost of the input. Friday night, some guy goes out and makes deliveries. Sunday night, he cooks. That's the opportunity cost of the input. The opportunity cost on one day, because everybody wants, maybe Saturday night, they want it delivered, they're watching television or whatever they're doing at home, they're playing cards, and they don't want to be disturbed. So you choose that then you have delivery, and other nights then they want to go out. And that may differ. And so you may use, the how you use your labor may differ from day to day. That's an opportunity cost. So does the opportunity cost change? But also something called a normal rate of profit. Normal rate of profit. And this is a very important concept. Normal rate of profit. Normal. What is a normal rate of profit? Well, I mentioned the opportunity cost. Let me go over this idea. The firm could invest in something else. Inputs. The firm owner can decide how many hours to work for their firm. They can use their hire labor. This is from the firm's owner. If I own a company, I have the choice. Do I spend all my time doing that, working on that company? Maybe I have something else to do. Maybe I run another company. Maybe I have some other opportunity. Maybe I want to spend more time with my family. You know, whatever those choices are, those are, you have to decide how much time to work in the firm. Let's say that, for example, I can, with very little effort, I can make a reasonable amount of money that with so effort I get a good return on my, somebody's willing to pay me work part-time, and I get 10,000 yen an hour to work part-time, and so I'll say, oh, okay, I'll work a little bit part-time. That sounds reasonable. That's a good, little effort, more money. That would be, that's the opportunity cost. So the normal profit means enough profit for the owner to stay interested in the firm. That is, what other opportunities does the owner have? So if you're running a business, and you don't just want to, if your revenues are equal to costs, you can't pay yourself anything. It's kind of, well, what are you in business for? You know, you're in business to make money. Now, you might be that, well, you're going to take little money now because you're building up a business, and maybe when it gets big, you'll realize the benefit. That's a future value, and you're putting that in the present and saying, well, it's worth it for me to continue because the future income I value in the present is being worth this much. So it's worth it to continue. But the point is that this is still, if there is some profit for the owner to stay interested in the firm, we're talking perfect competition. So perfect competition, that's enough profit for the owner to stay interested in the firm. And for a particular firm, particular kind of firm, the normal rate of return is exactly the same. The normal rate of the return is the same. Because it's all the same. Same inputs, the same prices, the same, you make those choices, but the point is the effort that the owners have to put is the same effort. So if there's anybody makes profits above a normal rate of return, we call that, in perfect competition, excess profit. Now, it's not, if you make extra money, it's not that there's anything, it doesn't mean that it's bad or wrong, it just means that it's more than what you should have expected. And the reality is that the only time that you expect to get excess profits is when you have market power. You have some kind of market power. You could have some short-term situation, but in general it's market power. Short-term situation, but those don't last forever. Otherwise it's market power. So as I said, it's important to remember economists include those opportunity costs. And so if we want to be very precise, this is the real underlying profit function. I'm always going to say. Keep that in mind. It's revenue minus money costs minus opportunity costs. That's also there. That's the real function. We don't talk about that a lot because, but this is what's really going on. This is what's really there. So you got to keep this in mind. Always keep this in mind when you think about the opportunity cost, perfect competitive firm, because then we're going to talk about what the profit, the profit that perfectly competitive firm experiences. And we'll see what that is in just a little bit. So that is the real profit function, the opportunity cost. But the thing about opportunity costs is that we can put numbers there. These aren't really, these numbers are fuzzy. They're fuzzy numbers. They're not, this is a hard number. I can say the wages are this, taxes are this, rent is this, the price of my raw materials is this. That's fuzzy. Because that could change. That could be, you know, your opportunity could change. You know, you have a family. You want to spend less time. Maybe that number goes down. Your child is going to college. That number goes way up. I know you're in school, but as a parent, I can tell you that cost goes way up. That number. Your opportunity cost. So then that means you want to keep on doing it. So production. We're going to talk about production and production functions. This is a very important production functions. Production function, we talked about the production technique. Production is the transformation of inputs into outputs. The production function is the specific technique, the specific production technique or recipe the firm uses to produce its output. That's a production function. So I'll give you a few examples of that so to make it clear. Take an almond shop. That's always a good example because, and this is a very much kind of a perfectly competitive firm too. It's a great example of at almond shops. There's some that are a little bit different, but you know that most almond shops you fall into, and it's kind of the same. It's pretty much the same. You know, some of them are a little bit different. Some of them are, but just any ramen shop that you fall into is kind of going to be the same. Well, they use water, they use noodles, they use meat, vegetables, salt, utensils, gas, electricity, labor, building space. They need all those things to produce an ramen. All of those are the recipe. It's part of the recipe. That's part of their production function. Their production function includes all of these inputs. So actually, in reality, you can see, just even for something that simple, when we start talking about the real world, it gets very complicated. Even something as simple as that takes a lot of different input. So you still have to be, it may be simple, maybe a simple product, but if you're running that business, you still have to have some smarts. You still have to be intelligent enough to think about how you're going to run your business and get your prices right, get your input price, make sure you get the best input prices, make sure you're selling your product for the right price, make sure you're paying the right rent, make sure you're at the right location. You have to make a lot of decisions. It's a business. So the ramen shop transforms those inputs into the output ramen. And the production function for a ramen shop would specify the mix of those inputs used in producing it. That would be the production function. How do we produce it? So ramen is some function. And it looks, but that's it. It's some function of beef and vegetables and building space, and it's some function like that. There's some function, and you can write it out, and you can put numbers on it. That is how, and in fact, that's one of the things that economists try to figure. Not something like that. That's more very complicated, but that's it. That's a production function. You start. That's how you put that. Like I said, we just had the example that you just did or struggled with, depending. That's mathematical form, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to put that into mathematical, some ideas. Not that much simpler than that. Much simpler. Don't worry about that. But we're going to start capturing that idea. Example, Tokyo Metro. They use trains, train track. What do they have? Trains, train track, tunnels, platforms, the turnstile, go in and out. You have to use electricity to run the trains, to the lights on the stations, the machines that sell tickets. You need labor. People have to drive the train. You need to have people in and out. People have problems. People get drunk. People fall on the track. You know, maybe they have to plan for. You have to have employees for that too, unfortunately. So that's and all of those inputs are transformed into the output of its train services. You show up at the train station, there's a train. But it's a business, you gotta run it. It's got all those things. That's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of planning, a lot of everything. We just show up, and for us, we take it for granted it's there, but that's a business. That's a complicated business. Now I'll take a simpler one, kind of similar to an almond shop, and kind of a little bit of again, perfectly competitive, perfectly kind of, but there are different coffee shops around town now. They use coffee beans, roasting machine, you might use a roasting machine depending, grinder, you might use a grinder. Now places around town have grinders, they may use a roasting machine. They may already have the ground beans ground, they use water, maybe filters, that now you've got the artisanal coffee. My neighborhood's full of it now. There's all kinds of artisanal coffee in my neighborhood. Cups, milk, maybe sugar, spoons, perhaps a coffee machine, like at Starbucks, you got the coffee machines, maybe an espresso machine, if you're making Italian-style coffee. You need building space, and you hire labor. So all those are kind of the things. Maybe there's a few other things, I don't know. But that's kind of the things that you need to produce coffee. Those are all the things. You put them all in a mix, and you can write down some formula, the formula that you would write to produce a cup of coffee. That's your production function. That's a production function. So now, and I'm going to take coffee because it's kind of producing the recipe is more or less the same for each cup of coffee. You need beans, you need water, you need space, you need cup, maybe sugar, maybe milk. Those are all kind of the same. Chairs, utensils. Those are all the same for pretty much any cup of coffee. Pretty much. The thing that's different is maybe labor. Labor is the thing. And what we're going to look at is we're going to focus on the effect different levels of labor have on some representative, let's say some kind of shop selling coffee and its ability to serve its customers. Let's think about that. So let's say we've got the coffee shop production function, and we're talking about how that output, the ability to serve customers, changes with the number of workers. So that's what we're going to have is this chart here. This is going to show that. I'm going to show the coffee shop production function. What's the ability of the firm to serve its customers depending upon how many workers it has. Well, one of the things that you know, unless you were, well, you've got zero, but now there are coffee machines. And the wonderful thing about this country is there are vending machines that sell coffee. And not just the cans, of course you can get the cans, but the ones also you put in and it actually brews it. You know, I'm sure many of you have bought coffee in some machine, and it puts the cup, and it comes out hot, and you can specify how much sugar and milk and strength and everything. You can push all kinds of buttons and pretty much get whatever you want. But we're not talking about that, we're talking about a shop. It says that in this shop, if you don't have any labor, nobody shows up for work that day, you don't sell anything. Nobody comes to work, there's no money, no customers. They'll line up and then they'll go somewhere else. Now, in fact, last Sunday I go to, my wife and I went to a coffee shop that wanted to have a cup of coffee, our artisanal coffee on Sunday, and in fact nobody was there that day. They took the day off. It's what he does. The guy, sometimes he doesn't work every day. You know, he's kind of counterculture character, and he's sometimes that means they don't show up. And I don't know, but he wasn't there. So he didn't sell anything. And the guy usually works. He'll work at this shop. It's a little shop, and he'll grind the coffee. Got a little grinder. He does the hot water. He's got all the different beans. He'll tell you about all the different coffees. He knows a lot about it. He's really very aware. He's clearly, and he's got a lot of cool stuff on the walls and a lot of skateboards on the walls with different things written on it. It's a pretty cool place, a little place. But he's by himself, and people like the coffee. They kind of line up, you know. But some people, there's the blue bottle that's just down the block, and some people are really cool and they don't go there because the really cool people go to that guy, the little guy, because that's really cool coffee. But other people, they just want to get the cup of coffee, and they might look and, well, there's a long line because there's only the one guy, and he only serves so many customers. I mean, it's great service. He'll tell you everything about the coffee, like this and that. He'll say it has certain flavors. You know, it has citrus flavor, or it has wine flavor, or it has, you know, I mean, he really knows his stuff. And yeah, it kind of has that taste. But he's only one guy. He can only serve so many people because they kind of line up. And maybe if the line is too long, people walking there will say, well, I'll just continue the blue bottle. That's just another block. So, and it's just a little shop. He doesn't have any space. So let's say they got a bigger shop. Probably if it was Sunday afternoon, business is pretty good on Sunday afternoon. A bigger shop, he had a second person, he probably could serve lots more. Because there's plenty of people that walk by, and some people just decide to go on. So maybe he could have 30. So what we're interested in is seeing, maybe there's 30. Maybe he has a bigger shop. He has a bigger shop, and there's a certain amount of business that comes by on Sunday. Maybe he has another person. And maybe now there's 45. He's got one person that maybe he's got the seats. He's got some seating now. He's got some person that cleans the tables. One person that makes the coffee. One person that rings up. Maybe one person rings and makes coffee, one person that just makes coffee, one person that keeps things clean, and when things get real busy, they take orders. You know, the different uses of the labor, as we say, the different opportunity costs of the labor is how you use it. That depends, and the point here is that you may have the marginal product. What we're interested in is in fact, the marginal product. If we have 0 workers, we get 0 output. 1 worker, we sell, say, 10 cups of coffee now. 2, we sell 30, so that means our marginal is 20. We increase by 20. 3, 45, our marginal is 15. It went up by 15 for that 1 worker. The 4th one, so we had a 4th one, well, it's kind of busy, and maybe if it's really busy, then they can do a little bit of work. You know, they can take a few extra orders, you get a few extra orders in, but it's not much more. It's not much more. And then maybe there's yet a 5th worker, and you bring the guy in, and you're all excited, he's all excited, you're all excited, And then he stands around because there's kind of nothing for him to do. And he says, what do I do? And then you realize he doesn't have anything to do. Sorry, you're fired. All right. Sorry, I made a mistake. That's what happens here. So the point is you can see, let's say if you're running a business, you look at the average product, because this is going to say what your average. It's also what you can pay on average. But this is on the margin. What we're really interested in, remember in economics, what we're really interested in is the margin. We want to know on the margin. Oh, if we had that one worker, no, we'll get 10. Oh, that second worker, that really had a big deal. That made a big deal. All these people walking, almost all of them, we could serve them. We're moving product. Add that third person, yeah, that was pretty good, but not quite as much as when we added that second person. We're still selling more. We add that fourth person, gee, it didn't really do much. You add that fifth person, and you said, what did we do that for? So you can see that in fact, the point here is that what you're willing to pay that extra worker, the revenue, what you to consider is what's the revenue that extra worker brings in. That's the value of the worker. And the thing I want to point out here is, let's say what you're doing, you're just getting people off the street, the average person, and you train them, and they work. Everybody works at the same efficiency, and they have basically the same level. You know, they're all they can all think and walk and talk and do everything as they're told, and you train them, and they all perform it, and the performance is exactly the same. So what we're talking about here is that every worker has the same ability. So we're talking about it, the workers have the same ability. But even though the workers have the same ability, the output of the additional worker is different. And that's very important, because the value of each additional worker can be different. And one of the things that we're also seeing here, this is an idea, well, we see it increase, and then it decreases, and it decreases towards zero. And this tells us, again, it's one of our ideas of marginal product. In this case, diminishing marginal product. The idea of diminishing marginal product. Diminishing marginal utility and diminishing marginal product. And the reality is, unfortunately, usually when we put more of something into it, we get each additional unit, we get less and less out. That's a very common thing that happens in the real world. When we put more units of input, we put more units of input of some input, and we get less and less additional output. That's what we're experiencing here. This is called diminishing marginal product. So the point here is that how much can we pay this worker? Well, the wage that you pay a worker ultimately is related to their marginal product. And that's a very interesting and important concept in market economics, is that the wage is a function of the marginal product of the worker. And so the marginal product, and ultimately the idea is that the wage that you pay is equal to the worker's marginal product. So let's say the cup of coffee costs 300 yen. That means that marginal worker brings 15 extra cups of coffee per hour, then that means they give revenue of 4,500 yen. You can't pay them any more than 4,500 yen. And you'd have to pay them something, 4,500 yen minus the cost of the ingredients to make the marginal cost of the 15 cups of coffee. That's what you can pay the worker. That's their marginal product. So that's kind of an idea. That's the simple idea that comes out of this kind of table. There we go. 4 minutes. let's see. Let's get through marginal productivity, and then we'll call it a day. The marginal productivity, when I talked about that, was I said diminishing marginal returns, and we had increasing marginal returns. And what happens in the real world is that quite often when we first add units of input from zero, you at first get some increasing marginal returns. And why would you expect increasing marginal returns if you go from zero? Well, how can you have diminishing marginal returns if you have diminishing marginal returns at zero input? Then that means the first unit of the input produces negative output. So you'd better have it better be positive marginal. You better have increasing marginal returns at least for some time, right? Or else nobody would ever get out of bed. There'd be no reason to do anything. So and clearly there's some increasing marginal returns from zero. And quite often we get to a point where we have diminishing marginal returns. So, as I've said, the marginal product is the additional output that can be achieved by adding 1 unit of given input. Now, I mentioned before, the workers have exactly the same skills. That's very, very important. Keep in mind that the workers themselves, we're always assuming that we're talking about exactly the same workers. There's no variation in worker skill here. Now also, we've got the idea of average product. You remember we talked about in that chart, we'll go back to this chart here, we have average product there, and we show that average productivity can also increase, but it's a little bit different. It increases when marginal productivity is greater than average productivity, and it decreases when marginal productivity is less than average productivity. That's not shocking, that's pretty straightforward kind of stuff, but just to make that point, that's what's going on. And what I said was, we talked about diminishing marginal product, and the law, basically this is the law of diminishing returns. So we've seen the law of diminishing in supply, in utility, in productivity, and now diminishing returns in a unit. Now, so that's what the firm experiences. And what we say, there's a term that we use that says, we use the term diminishing returns to scale. So diminishing returns to scale. We're going to see this a lot, diminishing returns to scale. You will see that over and over and over and over again in the future. You're going to know this concept. But this is very common. We've seen it over and over again. Diminishing returns, diminishing marginal utility, diminishing marginal returns to scale. Things diminish as they get bigger. That makes trade-offs. It produces trade-offs. And that's what a lot of our analysis in economics is. I think we're going to close there because the next step is the case of the two-variable production function. Isn't that beautiful? We'll close there and we'll start off with this next time. I think I will give you a break. However, if you did struggle with that, I think it's going to be worth, both in terms of points, I'll give you credit. You will get credit for doing that. And it's well worth it. If you struggle with that problem, to take the time, you're going to understand economics an awful lot better. You're going to understand a lot of the things going forward that I'm going to talk about in this class if you go through that exercise carefully. So please end, which also means that you're going to be watching my video, and because the wonderful thing about YouTube is I can see, I'll be able to see how many people get online and actually watch it, and how much time you spend. So you can't fool me. The only thing I can't see is who went on. But I think I should know that because I'll be able to see who turns what in.
You know, then I'll know that too.
So, thank you.
So,